Lord of the Mysteries. Chapter 1373. Facing. The avatar Klein created was a blueprint of his present state, and not Dwayne Dante's Sherlock Moriarty or Merlin Hermes, so as to avoid any obstacles in his self-awareness. After experiencing the mutation brought by Adam, he became more careful in such aspects. Glancing at his avatar, Klein's thoughts made his face turn blank. The avatar extended its right hand and stirred Sapphira Castle's strength to grab at the main body. Again and again, it failed more than 10 times. Finally, it managed to extract bits of dark light from the main body. Finally, Klein sighed and extinguished the thought of trying to execute this attempt during the actual battle. Despite not resisting at all, with his body and mind at ease, his avatar had still spent so much time failing while using Sapphira Castle's level and strength. It was easy to imagine its value in actual combat. As more and more Beyonder characteristics left his body, Klein felt relaxed. He felt like he had finally abandoned a heavy burden after a long walk. Of course, there was a certain fluctuation in his mental state. After losing the lingering mental imprint from Zeradol, the awakening of the celestial worthy's consciousness began to invade his mind. This was within Klein's expectations, therefore, he wasn't flustered at all. With his self-awareness that had long stabilized, his tenacious willpower, and his ample anchors, he gradually resisted the corruption of the celestial worthy's will and found a new balance. At the same time, when the attendant of mysteries Beyonder characteristic that Klein hadn't fully digested entered his avatar's body, its blank face suddenly twisted, growing out dark, lusterless eyes, and an indistinct white long beard. At this moment, it greatly resembled Zeradol. However, it was unable to withstand the madness brought about by the attendant of mysteries Beyonder characteristic. Its body rapidly developed towards collapse as transparent, distorted maggots crawled out and slippery and sinister tentacles extended out. It lost control on the spot. Klein didn't stay idle. Without any hesitation, he moved his finger, making the avatar turn into his marionette. This terminated the process of losing control. At this point, he had already made all preparations. His main body had completely digested the potion, allowing him to be in a state to accommodate the fool's uniqueness. He also had a Sequence 1 marionette. Following that, Klein leaned back into his chair and replayed what he was about to do in his mind to see if there were any fatal flaws. This is the most I can do for the battle of the deities. I can only do my best afterwards. Am I being too optimistic about the first stage because of the goddess's help and the supplementary river of eternal darkness's water? That's why I'm not worried that the Antigonus family's ancestor won't cause any accidents. After a round of scrutiny, Klein felt that he was still not cautious enough. There was a little arrogance and carelessness in the matter. After some thought, he created another avatar which still had a blank face. After completing this, Klein stood up, took out Creeping Hunger from the fog of history, and wore it on his left hand. This was a preparation for any possible small-scale battles. Under such a scene, Blink was faster and more convenient than grafting. After adjusting his collar, Klein slowly surveyed the area and made his gaze fall on the strange door of light that was stained with bluish black. It landed on the humans who were hanging there, wrapped in transparent cocoons. As he scanned each and every one of them, his gaze landed on the 3 shattered transparent cocoons. In the next second, Klein's figure vanished and appeared in the grayish-white fog of history. He walked to the time before the first epoch, and he arrived at the stacked metropolis of old. He stood at the top of a dilapidated skyscraper that barely stood erect. He looked down at the pile of wreckage, the public transportation vehicles that had turned into metal pancakes, and numerous overlapping sedans. Amidst the silence, he swept his gaze across the remaining buildings. It seemed to pass through the barriers of history, allowing him to see the electric lamps lit up inside them. The light from the lamps spread out gently, illuminating the glass and skyscrapers, streets, and every corner of Metropolis ruins. After staring at it for a long time, Klein retracted his gaze and took a step back to the real world. Right on the heels of that, he directly teleported to the summit of the Hornaces mountain range. He saw, that ancient palace that was shrouded in fog, dilapidated, and overgrown with weeds. His marionette and avatar appeared in front of him, like two guards. Facing the ancient palace, Klein pressed his top hat, raised his right hand, and snapped his fingers. The peak of the Hornacis mountain range instantly turned dark. Illusory stars appeared around them. Klein had grafted this place to the astral world. Without any hesitation, he led his marionette and avatar to the main door of the ancient palace. The marionette that looked almost identical to him was one step ahead. It bent down, stretched out its hands, and slowly pushed the heavy stone door open. The door slowly creaked open, revealing the scene inside. And it was different from the last time Klein sent the Trunsoist brass book over. It was dark inside, making it impossible for anyone to see the numerous corpses hanging above the hall, nor could he see the cluster of transparent maggots that were sitting on the huge stone chair. Without needing to guess, Klein made use of the intuition of a seer at the King of Angels level to confirm that this was the change caused by the Evernight goddess using the river of eternal darkness's water to allow the ancestor of the Antigonus family to enter a state of eternal slumber. After the marionette and avatar entered, he slowly walked through the door and entered the palace. The darkness swayed and changed. Numerous buildings appeared in the surroundings as figures walked along the streets. Their voices spread out, causing the surroundings to become lively and noisy. The people ignored Klein and his marionette and avatar as they headed for their destinations while chatting with each other. They and the buildings were dark in color, almost close to black and white. They were like old photos that came from deep within history that had suddenly come to life. This made Klein think of black and white holographic projections, the scenes in the historical void, and those in real dreams. He strolled through this town and walked along the elevating streets. And the higher they went, the more magnificent the buildings became. The massive stone pillars supported an exaggerated dome. The people living in this black and white photo were generally tall. They seemed to be learning, working, and resting. The scenes here changed continuously, showing the birth of a baby, the growth of a child, the ignorance of youth, the worries of an adult, the pressure of a middle-aged man, and the sorrow of aging. Of course, they were all interlinked with each other. Only a portion would become the main theme at times. As Klein ventured deeper, he saw the residents of the towns die. Their loved ones weren't overly sad. They carried the dead back home, placed them on the bed with a pillow as if the corpses were still alive. When Klein was about to leave the town's borders, the dead got up from bed, left their family, and walked out of their homes, heading towards the highest point of the street. There was also a city there. It seemed to be the city of the dead, the eventual refuge of life, a kingdom of eternal repose. This was very close to where normal people lived. The latter was distributed by the mountainside to the peak, while the former was on the peak. Others might be surprised by such a state, but Klein instantly understood what this scenery meant. This was because he directly saw spirit-body threads on the deceased. The moment they were about to die, their spirit-body threads floated towards the peak, controlled by an unknown existence. That also meant that they had become marionettes. Therefore, the deceased could leave their own families and head to the peak after dying for some time. And this was completely in line with the details mentioned in the research of the Hornacis main peak's relics. The nation of the Evernight belonged to the Mother of the Sky from the Evernight pathway, but at the peak, there was a town used by the Antigonus family's ancestor. Therefore, the residents of the nation of the Evernight were respectful and afraid of Evernight. They believed in the Mother of the Sky. At the same time, they believed that death was not the end. They believed that their dead loved ones would bless them from Evernight. Indeed, death wasn't the end. The city of dead was just beside them, at the peak. They could reach it just by walking, and the dead would continue living their lives as marionettes. In the eyes of ordinary people, this was undoubtedly the same as still being alive. The nation of the living and the city of dead were like two ends of a road. The distance between life and death was so close that they were like neighbors. This also explained why the nation of the Evernight didn't have tombs, as the deceased didn't need to be buried. They turned into marionettes and headed for the peak. This should be the nation of the Evernight from back then. Klein nodded slightly and proceeded towards the peak in the dark environment. What entered his eyes was indeed a seemingly normal town, but everyone here was a marionette. After passing through the marionettes who dressed and looked different, Klein entered the magnificent palace that seemed to honor a deity. Deep in the palace, on the huge stone chair, a figure propped its elbow on the armrest, its head leaning back against the chair. His face was rather young, but his long hair was half white. Half of it was concealed, the other revealed. His appearance was that of a man, and his eyes were darker than Zeradal's, and they contained an indescribable sense of the vicissitudes of life. His facial features were pretty good, but his cheeks had a thick, black tuft of fur that resembled a wolf fur. He gave off a feeling of both old age and youthfulness, rationality and madness. This was the ancestor of the Antigonus family. This time, he didn't appear in the form of a mythical creature, and instead sat on a huge stone chair in his original appearance. At that moment, his eyes were tightly shut as though he was in a deep sleep. And inside the hall, there were corpses wearing simple or luxurious clothes hanging from the ceiling. They were like inverted forests that swayed gently in the wind. After entering a state of eternal slumber, the ancestor of the Antigonus family finally managed to temporarily free himself from the state of losing control and madness, and returned to how he was before? Klein stood in the middle of the hall, looking at his target as he sighed. The scene he saw of the nation of the Evernight and the city of dead earlier was the dream belonging to Antigonus, a dream that lasted for more than 1,000 years.